You ever have one of those days, you haven't really done any heavy lifting, but your brain, it just feels like a wet sponge. You find yourself reading the same sentence over and over, and that usual 8K clarity you have is suddenly, well, it's a blurry 240p. So what is really going on there? Let's get into it, because the answer isn't just that you're tired. It's something way more interesting. And this right here, this is probably the single most important idea we're going to talk about. That feeling of complete exhaustion, that super short emotional fuse you've got, it's not a character flaw. It has nothing to do with being lazy. Your mind is saturated. It's like a hard drive that's hit 100% capacity. It's just full. So this state of saturation, we're calling it the high-resolution hangover, and it's that very specific kind of mental fatigue that doesn't come from a lack of trying, but from an absolute overload of information. So let's pop the hood and see what's really happening. Now, what's so fascinating here is the split between how you feel and what's actually true. On one side, you've got the feeling, the damp sponge, the low-res brain fog, but on the other side, that's the reality. You have a high-resolution mind. It's a powerful processor that just by its nature records way more data than the average person's. Your brain's temporary memory, its RAM, is literally maxed out. Just think about that for a second. For a mind like this, nothing gets missed. You're not just listening to a conversation, you're processing every tiny facial twitch, every bit of subtext. You're not just sitting in a room, you're cataloging the flicker of the lights, the subtle shifts in mood. All of that data, every last bit, gets filed away. And that's what leads to the state of saturation. And what's society's brilliant solution when we feel this way? Hustle harder, just grab another coffee, right? Well, let's talk about why that is, hands down, the worst possible advice you could give to a high-performance brain. And this just nails it, doesn't it? The whole myth we've been sold, that success is just about waking up at some ungodly hour and grinding it out, it's a low-resolution lie. For a mind like yours, sure, 4 a.m. might be a time for incredible insights, but only after a full night of deep, biological recovery. So let's be crystal clear about the deal you're making here. When you trade sleep for hustle, you're not getting ahead. You are paying a direct and very heavy tax on your ability to think clearly, to make good decisions, to function. You're essentially letting your high-performance engine get covered in metabolic soot. Okay, so if hustling isn't the answer, what is? The real solution is in understanding the biology of how our brain actually cleans itself. So let's take a look at how that mental soot we just talked about gets cleared out every single night in what is basically a power wash for your mind. All right, time to meet the hero of our story, the glymphatic system. You see, your brain doesn't have a typical lymphatic system like the rest of your body. Instead, it's got this amazing, specialized network that is, for all intents and purposes, its dedicated cleaning crew. Its number one job? To flush out all the metabolic junk that builds up while you're awake. And this is where it gets absolutely wild. To make this whole cleaning process work, your brain does something incredible. During that deep, slow-wave sleep, your brain cells can physically shrink by up to 60%. This opens up all these channels, creating space for cerebrospinal fluid to literally rush in and wash the garbage out from between your neurons. It's amazing. But the cleanup isn't just one simple flush. No, sleep is this high-stakes biological audit. It's a really sophisticated two-part process. First, during deep sleep, the glymphatic system takes out the trash. Then, during REM sleep, your brain runs a process called synaptic scaling. Think of it like defragging a hard drive. It deletes all the useless noise from the day and strengthens the connections for the signals and insights that truly matter. This reframes absolutely everything. We all think we learn and get smarter when we're focused and working, but that's just the data gathering phase. The actual process of turning all that data into real wisdom, of forging genuine mastery, that happens when you're asleep. That's when the real intellectual heavy lifting is done. So what happens when we skip this essential maintenance? Well, when we go into maintenance debt, our brain doesn't just feel a little foggy. It actually detects that unflushed junk as a sign that something is seriously wrong. It assumes you're in a crisis, which forces your mind to operate from a data graveyard. And that crisis signal, it puts your brain's threat detection center, the amygdala, on red alert. This is exactly why, when you're sleep deprived, you're so much more irritable and anxious. Your brain is literally stuck in a low-level state of fight or flight.
And this brings us to this impossible situation, a catch-22 we call the sentinels paradox. Your brain is on high alert because it hasn't been cleaned, but that very state of high alert is what prevents you from getting the deep sleep you need to clean it. It's a vicious cycle. You're too stressed to sleep, but the lack of sleep is what's making you so stressed.
So if we can't just brute force our way to sleep, we need a totally new game plan. We have to stop thinking about resting and start thinking with an active strategy. We need a deep recovery architecture, a system that's deliberately designed to power wash our intellect.
The question then becomes, how do we actually do this? How do we create the perfect environment for that deep, restorative, glymphatic flush to happen? And the answer isn't in some magic pill, it's in a protocol. It's all about calibrating your environment and your habits to support your mind's natural maintenance cycle. Okay, here it is, the recovery protocol. 4 concrete, totally actionable steps. Number 1, the digital sunset. All blue light from screens ends 90 minutes before you want to be asleep. This is non-negotiable. It lets your body produce melatonin. Second, the brain dump. Get all those thoughts, all those open loops swirling in your head out and onto a piece of paper. This literally tells your brain it's safe to power down. Third, temperature gating. A hot shower before bed actually helps drop your core body temp, which is a huge biological trigger to start that deep sleep flush. And finally, the input zero wake up. No phone. For the first 30 minutes of the day, just don't. Let your brain finish its startup sequence before you start pouring in new data.
So the huge takeaway here is to completely shift your relationship with sleep. It is not some passive thing where you're missing out on life. It's the active, absolutely critical process of encoding the world so you can actually show up with clarity and vision the next day.
And this really leaves us with a final mission. Your high-resolution mind is your single greatest asset. It's not a dumpster for endless information and metabolic waste. It is a masterpiece, and it requires care, it requires maintenance, and it requires the right architecture to perform at its best. The only question left is, are you going to protect it? You know those days, right? You haven't done an ounce of physical work, but your brain just feels heavy, like a wet sponge. You're rereading the same email for the 5th time, and your patience is just completely gone. It's a feeling we all know, but what is actually physically happening inside our heads? Well, let's get into it. First things first, we've got to reframe this whole feeling. This isn't a character flaw. It's not you being lazy, it's a biological state of being completely full. Your brain has hit its data limit for the day. Plain and simple, you are saturated. And the difference is, well, it's like night and day. On a good day, your mind is firing on all cylinders, just crystal clear. We're talking 8K resolution. But when you're saturated, it's like you've been downgraded to 240p. Everything's blurry, it's slow, and you're just struggling to load the most basic thoughts. That, right there, is brain fog.
Yeah, there is a name for this feeling, a high-resolution hangover. It's the price you pay for having a mind that's constantly working, capturing every little detail of the world, even when you don't notice it. Think about it like this. Your brain is a top-of-the-line camera. It's not just passively watching things go by. It's actively recording everything. Every tiny facial expression, every subtle shift in tone, all of it. And all that data has to go somewhere. The mental exhaustion you feel, that's just the processing fee for all that high-def recording. So if our brains are always recording, how in the world do they clear the cache? Well, that leads us to the coolest part of this whole story, this incredible biological power wash that's meant to happen every single night while you sleep. And that brings us to something called the glymphatic system. Now, your brain is special. It doesn't have the normal lymphatic system that the rest of your body uses for cleanup. Instead, it has this exclusive network. Its entire job is to clear out waste, and it only really gets going when you're in a deep, deep sleep. You see, the very act of thinking, of processing all that 8K data, it actually creates a physical byproduct. It's metabolic trash, specifically a protein called amyloid beta. And just like any busy city, if that trash doesn't get collected, it starts to pile up, and things get messy, fast. So for this cleanup crew to do its job, a few things have to line up perfectly. First, you have to get into that deep, slow wave sleep. Second, your brain has to switch off input mode. It's got to stop processing the outside world. And third, and this is the wild part, your brain cells literally change their shape. And they don't just shrink a tiny bit. We're talking up to 60%. That's a huge physical change happening inside your head every single night. It's not just rest, it's a full-on structural renovation. So why do the cells shrink?
It's to make space. This contraction opens up all these channels between your neurons, and that lets cerebrospinal fluid just flood the area. This is that power wash we were talking about. This fluid rushes through and literally flushes all that metabolic junk, that amyloid beta, right out of your brain. You can actually think about this whole process as a kind of formula. Your cognitive recovery equals your glymphatic flow times how long you're in deep sleep, all divided by your daily sensory load. If the number on top is small and the number on the bottom, your daily input is huge, well, you're running a serious cognitive deficit.
So we've seen how it's supposed to work. But what happens when that nightly cleanup gets interrupted? What's the actual, tangible cost of being stuck in input mode all the time and skipping that maintenance cycle?
And that's a question we really need to ask ourselves, because this isn't about just feeling a little groggy. The cost of even a single night of bad sleep is physical and it's immediate. You know that brain fog feeling? It's not some vague idea. It is the literal, physical presence of leftover metabolic trash gumming up the works between your neurons. You're trying to send signals through a system that is literally clogged. And when this becomes a habit, you build up what's called maintenance debt. Your mind is trying to operate in a data graveyard full of old, unprocessed junk. Your amygdala, which is your brain's alarm system, goes into overdrive because it thinks all that buildup means there's a crisis. You start ditching long-term vision for just frantic, short-term busy work. And the real kicker? This high alert state makes it even harder to fall asleep. It's called the sentinels paradox. And you know, it's not just about cleaning out the trash. It's also about upgrading your software. During REM sleep, your brain does this thing called synaptic scaling. It sifts through the day's data, strengthening the important connections, the signal, and literally deleting the random, useless stuff, the noise. Without that, you're left with a brain full of clutter but zero real insights. This just completely blows up that whole hustle culture myth. The idea that you can trade sleep for success is, to be blunt, a low-resolution lie. For a mind that's meant to perform at a high level, every hour of deep sleep you skip is a direct hit to your ability to think clearly. Okay, so we've laid out the problem pretty clearly. Now, what do we do about it? We need to stop just hoping for a good night's rest and start actively architecting our deep recovery. Here's a super practical 4-step protocol. Number 1, the digital sunset. 90 minutes before bed, all screens go off. No more blue light. 2, the brain dump. Get all those worries and to-do lists out of your head and onto a piece of paper. Clear that mental RAM. 3, trigger your body to cool down, maybe with a hot shower to get the flush started. And finally, number 4, this one is so important. When you wake up, no phone for the first 30 minutes. Give your brain time to finish its job. You know, the biggest change here might just be in your mindset. Stop thinking of sleep as passively resting and start seeing it for what it is, actively recovering. You're not checking out of life, you're processing it so you can actually be present for it the next day. And really, this is the bottom line, the real work, forming new connections, generating insights, actually getting smarter. That doesn't happen when you're grinding it out. It happens during that nightly save and cleanup cycle. You get smarter while you're asleep. So I'll just leave you with this question. When you think about your sleep, are you just dumping more and more junk into the system day after day? Or are you giving your mind the kind of careful maintenance that a true masterpiece actually deserves? The choice and the clarity that comes with it is all yours. Okay, let's dive right in. We need to completely reframe how you think about sleep. Forget the idea of rest. We're talking about a critical, non-negotiable maintenance process. It's a biological audit that literally determines the quality of your entire waking life. This isn't about being lazy or sleeping more. It's about architecting deep, powerful recovery. You know this feeling, right? You haven't run a marathon or done any heavy lifting, but your brain just feels fried, mushy. You find yourself rereading the same sentence over and over, your focus is shot, and your emotional fuse is so short it's practically non-existent. And what does society tell you? You're lazy, just hustle harder, grab another coffee. But that's a low-resolution answer. The reality isn't that you're lazy. The reality is that you're saturated. Your mind, which is this incredible high-resolution instrument, has simply recorded too much data. Its cache is full. So that brings us to the core problem of what we're calling the high-resolution mind. Let's get into why your incredible mental hardware, your brain, which is basically 8K hardware, can suddenly feel like it's buffering on a 240p dial-up connection.
See, your high-res mind is constantly recording life in Ultra HD. You pick up on everything, every microexpression, every subtle subtext, every little detail gets filed away. But what happens when a computer's RAM gets totally full? It slows down, it glitches, it crashes. That's exactly what's happening in your head. Your temporary memory is maxed out, and your 8K mental resolution just plummets to a blurry, frustrating 240p.
So how do we fix this? The answer is not another productivity hack. The answer is found in your brain's essential, non-negotiable maintenance window. It's the active, biological audit that only happens after you turn out the lights.
And the star of this whole nightly operation is an incredible process called the glymphatic system. Think of it like a dedicated, high-pressure power washing crew just for your brain. But here's the kicker. This cleaning crew only clocks in when you are in deep, restorative sleep.
Think of it this way. All day long, as your high-performance brain is firing on all cylinders, it's creating byproducts. It's like the soot and exhaust from a powerful engine. This metabolic trash, which includes nasty stuff like amyloid beta, literally builds up in the spaces between your brain cells.
And this is where it gets absolutely wild. To let the cleaning crew do its job, your brain does something incredible. During deep sleep, your brain cells physically shrink, and not just by a little bit. They shrink by up to 60%.
That shrinkage is the key. It opens up these massive channels, basically opening the floodgates for that cerebral spinal fluid to rush in and flush out all the metabolic soot from the day. It is a literal physical cleaning cycle. If you skip it, that trash stays there, and that is the source of that damp sponge feeling. So what happens when you skip this flush night after night? This is where it gets serious. You start to accumulate what's called maintenance debt, and that triggers a really dangerous feedback loop. When that metabolic trash isn't flushed, your brain's threat detector, the amygdala, senses that something is wrong. It doesn't know it's just trash, so it assumes you're in a state of crisis. It goes on high alert, making you anxious and vigilant, which of course makes it even harder to fall asleep. That is the Sentinel's paradox. The lack of sleep puts your brain on high alert, which then prevents you from getting the very sleep you so desperately need.
And this directly confronts that whole hustle culture narrative. The idea that success happens at 4 a.m. is a low-resolution lie, plain and simple. For high-resolution mind, 4 a.m. is not for grinding through busy work. It's for the creative synthesis and deep insights that can only happen after a full night of deep recovery.
And just look at this trade-off. It's a terrible deal. You are giving up deep sleep, your core executive function, and your high-fidelity vision. In exchange, you get what? A few more hours of low-quality busy work? You're trading your vision for busy work, and you're left trying to see the world through a lens covered in soot.
All right, enough about the problem. Let's get to the solution. How do we actually engineer the perfect flush for our high-performance brains? We need a protocol, a system we can rely on every single night. So here it is, the 4-step protocol for architecting deep recovery. Number 1, the digital sunset. 2, the brain dump. 3, temperature gating. And 4, the input zero wake up. Let's break down exactly how each one contributes to that perfect flush. Step 1 is simple, but it is absolutely non-negotiable. 90 minutes before you plan to go to sleep, all screens go off, period. The blue light from our devices is a powerful signal that essentially screams it's high noon to your brain, and it completely shuts down the production of melatonin you need to enter deep sleep. Next up, the brain dump. You need to clear your mental RAM. Get a physical piece of paper and a pen and write down every single thought, worry, or to-do item that's bouncing around in your head. You're externalizing your anxieties, moving them from your RAM to paper. This sends a powerful signal to your amygdala that all threats are logged and it is safe to stand down. Now, this is a fascinating biological trigger. To actually initiate that deep cleaning flush, your brain's core temperature needs to drop by about 2 degrees. A clever way to hack this is by taking a hot shower or a hot bath before bed. It seems counterintuitive, but it brings all the blood to the surface of your skin, which then allows your core to cool down much faster when you get out. And finally, step 4. The maintenance window doesn't slam shut the second you open your eyes. Your brain is still finishing up its file integration. It's organizing all of yesterday's data. Grabbing your phone immediately is like trying to install new bloatware while the system is still booting up. Give your brain 30 minutes of zero input. Let it finish the job. This is the core mindset shift we have to make. Stop thinking of sleep as resting and start seeing it as active recovering. You're not withdrawing from life or missing out on the world. You are encoding the world, processing all that data so you can actually use it tomorrow with absolute clarity.
Ultimately, it really comes down to this. Your mind is the most valuable asset you will ever have. It is the cathedral you are building your entire life within. Don't let the maintenance crew skip a single night. Stop treating it like a dumpster and start treating it like the masterpiece it is. Remember this, all of your best insights, your creativity, your genius, all of it is forged in that quiet, clean, recovered mental space. So the final question I want to leave you with is this. Are you protecting it with the ferocity it deserves? Today, we're diving into a powerful framework that's all about getting back to true mental clarity. And look, this isn't just about getting more sleep. It's about how to architect a deep recovery cycle designed to, well, power wash your entire intellect. Ever have one of those days where you barely moved a muscle, but by the end of it, your brain just feels completely fried? Yeah, this quote, it just hits the nail on the head. That feeling, it isn't laziness, it's saturation. You're just completely overloaded. And this slide lays it out perfectly. On one side, you have your mind in 8K resolution. Everything is clear, you're focused, you're calm. But on the other side, you get the 240p blur. You know that feeling, the damp sponge brain, where you have to reread the same sentence 3 times, and your emotional fuse is so short it's practically non-existent. You can feel the drop in quality. So what's really going on here? Well, the source material argues it's because you have what it calls a high-resolution mind. And this isn't a bug, it's a feature. Think of your mind like a high-end camera constantly recording a staggering amount of data all day long. You know, subtle microexpressions, the subtext of a conversation, background noises, all of this stuff just floods your brain's temporary memory. It's RAM. Okay, so if our brains are basically high-def recorders running all day, how do they ever clean up and make more space? Well, that brings us to the brain's own deep cleaning cycle, the neuromechanical wash that's supposed to happen every single night. And this is where we get into some really cool biology. Let me introduce you to the glymphatic system. See, your brain is special. Unlike the rest of your body, it doesn't have a standard lymphatic system for waste removal. Instead, it has this incredible specialized network that acts like a power washer, using cerebrospinal fluid to flush out all the gunk. And what is all this gunk exactly? Well, it's basically metabolic trash. The main offender is a protein called amyloid beta. It's the natural byproduct of all that intense thinking and processing your 8K mind does all day. While you're awake, your brain is just too busy to clean house. Now, this is where it gets absolutely wild. To even make this cleaning process possible, your brain cells can literally shrink by up to 60% while you're in deep sleep. This opens up the channels between them, which allows that cerebrospinal fluid to rush through and wash away all that metabolic waste. It's a pretty incredible piece of biological engineering. So you can kind of think of it like a formula. Your recovery is basically your brain's cleaning efficiency divided by how much sensory data you took in that day. Now, if you have a high-resolution mind, that daily sensory load is always going to be high. So if your sleep isn't optimized for cleaning, you fall behind. You enter a state of negative recovery. That is the physical reason you feel brain fog. And this is such a critical point. Sleep isn't just passive downtime. It's an active, high-stakes biological process where you're cleaning out old data and cementing the new. It's literally when your brain gets smarter, stronger, and clearer for the next day. But this all leads to a really vicious cycle. If you're so saturated and exhausted, why is it so incredibly hard to get that deep, restorative sleep you need? This is what we call the Sentinel's paradox. So here's the paradox in a nutshell. All that metabolic trash that's built up, it literally puts your brain on high alert. It signals that there's a crisis, which kicks your threat detection system into overdrive. This makes it almost impossible to fall into the deep sleep you need to actually flush the system. You're exhausted, but your brain is simply too wound up to rest. To fix this, we need a fundamental mindset shift. The low-resolution view, the one that hustle culture loves to push, sees sleep as just resting. It's a withdrawal from life, a waste of time. But the high-resolution view sees it for what it is, an active process of recovering, encoding information, and calibrating your mind for peak performance.
Okay, so we get the problem, we understand the biology. Now, how do we actually physically architect the perfect flush for our high-performance brains? We implement the recovery protocol. Think of this as the hardware calibration for your mind.
All right, let's get into the specifics of calibrating your hardware. Step 1, the digital sunset. 90 minutes before you plan to sleep, all blue light has to go. Blue light sends a signal to your brain that it's noon. You have to kill that noise to let your natural melatonin signal rise. Step 2, the brain dump. Before bed, grab a pen and paper and write down every single open loop in your mind. All the to-dos, worries, ideas. By moving that data out of your head, you're telling your brain's alarm system that it's safe to stand down. Step 3, temperature gating. Your brain needs to drop its core temperature to kick off that glymphatic flush. The best way to trigger this is to take a hot shower, which brings blood to the surface of your skin, and then get into a cool room. And finally, step 4, the input zero wake up. Do not touch your phone for the first 30 minutes of the day. Period. Let your brain finish its overnight file integration before you start installing new bloatware.
Following this protocol isn't just a collection of sleep hacks. It's a statement. It's how you begin to reclaim your mind's native 8K resolution. It's a total shift in how we maintain our most valuable asset. So please remember this. You are not missing out on anything when you sleep. You are actively building the architectural foundation that supports everything, and I mean everything you do while you're awake. And this is the ultimate takeaway. Your mind is a high-performance engine. It's a work of art. It is not a dumpster for random inputs and metabolic garbage. It deserves to be treated, tuned, and maintained like a masterpiece.
You are the sentinel, the guardian of this incredible cognitive engine. And that engine requires the deep, restorative quiet of a proper maintenance cycle to hit its true 8K potential. So the choice is really yours. Are you going to keep operating in that 240p blur, or are you ready to take these deliberate steps to reclaim your clarity? Be the observer of your own system, reclaim your resolution.